Anyway, let's crank down our random number generator. Let's see what we roll next. 24, all the way at the end. What is that? Oh, right. 365 days to the wedding. I've heard a lot of talk about the manga for this one, and I heard this one was solid as a seasonal, but not a lot of, like, pomp to it, I guess. Yeah, let's just dive in.
You know, a lot of anime characters get accused of being somewhere on the autistic spectrum. Not unjustly in a lot of cases, but I gotta say, the two leads in this show take the cake. I just finished up 365 Days to the Wedding. It's a decent rom-com. Just gonna come out the gate and say this is a incredibly average looking show. This is very just plain, not a lot of cinematic flair, very basic shot composition and character designs and stuff. And in terms of it being like serviceable, it does the job. Like, some of the coworker designs are kind of nice, like Gonda, this big chubby guy. I kind of like his design. And our main female lead of Honjoji, she's got this just very classic female lead design, business lady design that works. And I'll say, like, the main guy, Ohara, is like a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of like male leads. He's not a Yuji every lead looking ass dude. He kind of looks like a more wavy haired version of, fuck, who's the guy from Silver Spoon, the lead in that? Kind of looked like that. So character designs are really the only thing where it even thinks of venturing into some more interesting territory. Outside of that, this is just an incredibly played looking series, and often not particularly well animated. Well, more often I should say it is not particularly animated. This is just a very disappointing production, I will say. Like, often I would be watching this and I would think stuff like, this might be better as like a live action show. Now, maybe I'm only thinking that because the production for this one is so underwhelming, but maybe that's the case, or maybe it just needed a better production. I don't even know who did the production for this show, but it is not noteworthy in any way. But I managed to finish it. Mostly on the... If you've been watching me do this seasonal wrap-up show for long enough, you know that one of my favorite tropes is like, oops, now we're married. That's like... That's what I'm calling that trope. Stuff like Yozakura Family and Fly Me to the Moon and Twin Star Exorcists. It's like it's one of my favorite tropes. Now I can add this one to the bunch, except instead of oops, now we're married, it's oh, we gotta pretend to be married. That's what I was. This series is basically like that movie, The Proposal. If you ever saw that, the one with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, where instead of one of the characters is getting deported, so they have to get married, it's one of the characters is going to get shipped off to Alaska to start a new branch of the company, so they have to get married. So, very, very similar premise, but instead of... I didn't actually see that movie, I just know that that's what the premise of it is. I assume it is, besides that's much more like American rom-com tropes. This is more Japanese office rom-com tropes. And I should probably get back to the thing that I opened this review with the fact that these are... I feel comfortable saying that these two are in some ways autistic. I feel very comfortable in saying that. The only discomfort in that is being like, oh shit, I do a lot of that. Oh, I do a lot of that. Uh-oh. Like, this is very, like, two leads do not understand communication at all, and often don't even try to understand communication until they start interacting with each other more, and that motivates them to try to understand how to convey their feelings a bit more. And you know what? I do relate to a lot of the ideas in this show on in sort of like the negative aspects of it, where it's like, yeah, it is more convenient just to be alone sometimes and not have to share your life with someone. It's convenient to just coast by on a straight road that stretches on into the distance forever and not have to deal with any surprises that come your way. But sometimes you want a little surprise. Sometimes you want to take a detour. And that's the I guess the one area where this show actually does have a little bit of visual interest, is sometimes like the visual metaphors are really solid. Like the journey metaphors. And also there's this one gag where like Honjoji has like an emotional she's just venting audibly, but instead of her screaming, it's like volcanoes blowing up in the background. It's a very funny gag. Also, I will definitely say a lot of this is carried by the voice cast. Not carried necessarily, but more so just like made it very easy to watch. Like, I don't even know who did the main guy's voice, but Honjoji is voiced by Saori Hayami, who, for some reason, I cannot stop mentioning on the seasonal wrap-up show, mostly because she's in fucking everything. She is the new Hanakana at this point, which I have no complaints about because Saori Hayami is really good at what she does. This might actually be one of her more, like, flexing, more like one of her roles that has like the widest range of stuff, or more so just there are not necessarily a range, but more so there are two extremes of it that she fluctuates between: the very calm, collected, emotions turned off Honjoji, and the freaking out over maps and landscapes and stuff Honjoji. That's another place where the like this the spectrum-y stuff comes in. Like, the female lead of the show is really into maps and collects rocks. It's... Come on. It's right there. Not bad hobbies, though. Also, like, if they had not written this character this way, I might have accused them of being like, oh, this is just another quirky hobby that this main love interest has, but like it actually like relates to her character in really interesting ways. I love the way that they draw it back to, well, why do you like maps so much? Well, it's because my mom traveled across Japan all the time when I was young, so I didn't really get to see her, so I entertained myself by seeing where she was on the map and marking off all the places in Japan that she's been to. And I don't think she necessarily says, and this is why I like maps. I think it's just you draw that conclusion from what we see in the flashback. The show's very hit and miss on like show don't tell. Like sometimes it'll have stuff like that where it's just like, oh, you can just draw conclusions about how we got from A to B based on different conversations the characters have without them explaining it to us. But then also sometimes we'll just get those internal monologues that just explain everything, which, to be fair, is also necessary sometimes when we're talking about a show that's about like figuring out how to communicate with people. So explaining the point is sometimes necessary. Not always well implemented, but necessary. And I do really like the journey that these two characters sort of take on their way to discovering that sort of truth. Just the way that they, and it's not even like it is a forced interaction, but it's an interaction that they force on themselves. So it's very funny in that regard, where it's sort of, and also sort of like a, well, you agreed to this, sort of, so now you have to figure your way through this. So I found it very entertaining in that regard, and I just liked the way that some of these characters. I liked the chemistry or lack of chemistry in a lot of instances between certain characters, and I like that. It's sort of a easy out, I guess, in terms of writing, but it's like when they deceive the office into thinking that they're getting married, it's very much a like, wow, you two are like so good together, and then no one figures it out ever because they just, for lack to keep up with modern meme language, they match each other's freaks in a certain way. They just fit really well together. Which, if it had been any other combination of characters, it probably would not have worked at all, and they would have just given up at some point, or just gone back to being coworkers at the end instead of actually trying to do the marriage stuff. But the fact that they put these two characters together in a way that both like highlights the fact that they need to grow and learn from each other, but also that they still match each other in ways that are still compatible enough with each other that they don't have to like separate at the end or something. And I do think like the last probably like 4 or 5 episodes of this show really are where like the big meat of it is. I will say like the first half it is pretty slow. Like it took me basically all day on a Sunday to watch this. So instead of just breezing through it in like a half a day, which is what like a really good 12 episode show I could knock out in half a day, but this one took me basically from like 9 in the morning to it's now 8:30 at night, and I was just sort of starting and stopping, doing other things, doing shit on my phone and stuff. So it's like, it's not the most eye-grabbing show, or just attention-grabbing in general at first. And there were definitely moments where I was just dating on like, do I want to continue it? But I liked the chemistry amongst the characters enough to keep watching it. I liked where it was going with the themes that it was developing. Oh, that's another thing I didn't particularly like about the show is like the soundtrack is like sometimes a little too somber, I guess is the word for it. Sometimes like it just gets a little too like a shade too melancholic for whatever scene is going on. So that was weird. But so I guess most of the technical stuff aside from the voice acting I'm just not a fan of for this show. It's a very plain production. I guess in the end, I wouldn't have. I'm not. I don't feel like I wasted my time at the end of it because I do think the second half of the show really starts doling out some of the really good stuff. And like some of the more the romantic tension starts to heat up a little more in the second half. We get this really cool episode with the Gonda character that I mentioned before about him. Like his, it feels like a left turn at first into filler, but it ends up being something really sort of necessary for Ohara to see Gonda just completely fail at a relationship that he was trying to build up with someone who turned out to be a single mother. Um, oh, also there's like just a straight up just canon gay character in this show. Just like this, like episode 3, it's like Ohara has to, and because they're from they work at a travel agency, Ohara has to entertain the princess from a micronation, and it turns out that she has like uh, a lover who is a woman, and they present it just totally normally, and it was like, cool, we're not making a big deal about this. Rock on. Um, none of the like, but you're two girls. None of that shit. We are past the point of of the Madoka best friend girls can't love girls character. um, but yeah, I just dug the chemistry of everyone involved in it. I liked the uh, specifics of our two lead characters. They felt surprisingly fleshed out in interesting ways, and I just generally liked the vibe of it. Uh, I don't feel like I would have. I don't. If I had dropped it, I don't think I would have missed out on a lot. But I'm always entertained by this trope, so this like hits my sweet spot in very specific ways. So glad I watched it. Would I recommend it? Yes, but I'm not gonna like go out of my way to say that it's amazing. It's totally fine.
I should also point out that apparently this only got like halfway through the manga. Like it got up through something in volume 6 out of 11 volumes, so maybe it'll get a second season. I don't particularly need one because it ended in a decent spot, but it would certainly have more to discuss once they like finally close in on the wedding. Anyway, 365 days to the wedding is complete. We're going to scroll not too far up the list, and we're going to put it right, where did I say I was going to put it? Yeah, we're going to put it, right in here in the number 49 spot with a decent 6. It is a good time. Okay. Now back to the randoms. What do we have left? We have 23 left, so we'll do probably 2 more for this video. So let's see what we get. 1. Tasuketsu, Fate of the Majority. I think this was another 2-core one that's a holdover from Summer. Have not heard anyone talk about this. Probably just garbage, but let's give it a shot anyway. Yeah, that's just slop. That's nothing. It's just mediocre bullshit with nothing in it. I got like 7 or 8 minutes into Tasuketsu, Fate of the Majority. It's gonna be one of those like death game anime, but not really a death game, but maybe it is. I assume characters will die at some point, but like the show basically opens with like 10 characters being selected, and literally everyone else in the city fucking dies.
and like they see all the dead bodies and shit, and only like 2 people of these 10 seem to be notably like upset by this. Everyone else just has this very stern anime face on them. But it's like their families just died. And they're not showing like any emotion over it. Like the student council president is like just being super serious and just normal. So clearly we're not going for a character-centric story. But also we're not going for a very logical story either. Because like it's also like the internet goes out completely and apparently the gas goes out. So like you can't use like a gas stove, but the water and electricity still work? It seems like they just wanted to arbitrarily pick and choose which utilities still worked. So that's stupid. Also, it looks mediocre as fuck. Fucking terrible character designs. Just bland as shit and not in like a 365 days till the wedding way where it's like, oh, these are like designs that I'm familiar with, but they're still like well composed enough to be pleasant to look at. This is just let's throw some shit at the wall and see what lurks. Bad.
Okay, Tasuketsu off the list. So that's the last of the summer holdovers or leftovers. Alright, let's do one more random. Let's see what it is. 10. Mecha-Ude, Mechanical Arms. Okay, this is another one of the ones that was like pretty hyped this season, at least going into this season, and then not a lot of people talked about it. So let's give it a chance.
Well, I gave it a shot, but honestly, there is nothing here for me. I got it 2 episodes into Mecha-Ude, Mechanical Arms, and the only notable thing about it is the animation in that, how do I say this? It looks, let me phrase this very carefully. Some people would say that it looks cheap or bad or something along those lines. But I don't think that's what's happening here. First of all, I think the team for this is a lot smaller. That's the impression that I get. Because apparently this is also based on like a single like OVA or something from 2018 or whatever. The word that strikes me for the style of animation, like specifically the movement, it strikes me as punk somehow. Like, not like aesthetically punk, but like ideologically, which is weird to say about animation. It does not move like your standard anime, but it does look like anime. It just has this little twist to how things move sometimes, where it's just a little bit more fluid in certain areas that add a nice little flourish, or a little bit choppier in other areas to make something look kind of cool. I was talking about this online, and someone just said it was very like trigger-like, like in terms of like Kill la Kill animation, and I think that's a good starting point. But I think Mecha-Ude is even more off in the punk direction than Kill la Kill, because Kill la Kill, like the frame count still feels like anime to a certain degree, but Mecha-Ude starts to fuck with like in between frames in certain ways that I think are interesting. Unfortunately, the story's just kind of boring. This is a very, very, very standard anime sci-fi story. Got high school kid finds a science MacGuffin that is like super powerful and more powerful than all of the other science MacGuffins. And there are two warring organizations. One is an evil corporation and one is a rebel group. It is so painfully tropey and average and bog standard. Like, this is the stuff. This is the kind of plotline that is used as to, like, I'm not going to ascribe an intention to why these types of shows exist, because I'm sure someone likes them. I know a lot of people talked about Mecha-Ude when the first few episodes were coming out. It very quickly fell off, but I can understand why some people would like this type of show if they haven't seen this type of show a lot before. Because I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of this type of show. And very rarely are they anything above average. Now, there are some interesting, like, points to this. I like the mechanical sidekick science MacGuffin character, mostly because he's voiced by Tomokazu Sugita, who almost always delivers a good performance. And he's not like Gintoki levels of explosive comedy in this, but he is definitely doing like a nice little comedic role for this character, and I appreciate that. I also like this Aki character, this brash, wants to fucking fight everybody character, and just isn't the negotiating type. But also she likes food, and she likes eating and like sweets and just food in general. The Gap Moe of it all is very fun, and I like her design a lot. I'll give points for even like the CG stuff in the series is actually pretty decent. The designs, well, the main design for the Sugita character, who's named Alma, I think that's what his name was. I like that design because it's a lot more like blocky and more like traditionally robot-y. The other designs I'm not quite as much of a fan of because they are much more sci-fi bullshit looking, if that makes any sense. Like anime sci-fi bullshit where it's all like this angular insanity that it just is hard to look at sometimes. It's hard to get a grasp of like the silhouette. So I don't like those designs. I like the single hand design that just looks like a big blocky robot hand. I like that. Everything else, not particularly a fan of so far. Yeah, I was willing to give this one a shot, and I do like a lot of the aesthetic to it. Not all of it, but a lot of the aesthetic. I don't mind the animation at all. It reminds me of some quote-unquote indie anime stuff. Like, this reminds me of stuff from, like, it's not an exact comparison, but stuff like To Be Heroine is a good example. Just these weird... I think that's actually a Chinese production, actually, so that's not quite the same. But, yeah, I just wish the story had a little bit more to offer, but it just kind of doesn't.
Okay, Mecha-Ude, unfortunately coming off the list. Now it's time for our first end cap of this season, Dandadan. I read a decent chunk of the manga, and the anime adaptation is being done by Science Saru and got really big acclaim from the general anime watching audience. So let's dive into it.
Holy cliffhangers, Batman. Wow, y'all were not kidding about the last episode leaving off on a cliffhanger. What the fuck? Anyway, just watched all of Dandadan first season. Second season already got announced, so I can already tell you I'll definitely be watching that. But I actually read, I think, like 6 volumes of the manga. I finished the arc that this current season of the anime is on. I finished that arc. So I'm not going to talk about how that arc ends. Actually, I think I got a little bit past that arc, actually. So I have already read all of this season of Dandadan, but I've also dropped the manga for this. Again, I read manga physically, so I have to spend money on all of the manga that I read, so I have to be very picky about that. I don't hate the manga, it's just, it was not something that I felt compelled to continue reading. Mostly because, like, much like the anime, it has a lot of very immature humor in it that is extremely hit and miss. Sometimes it's very funny. Like, the stuff with Okarun's balls, I genuinely think that's very funny, and the way that they deal with that, like his missing shaft and family jewels, and the way that part of it is executed is very funny. But then there's also just like a lot of stuff where it's like a lot of characters are just like naked except for their underwear, and it's like that's the joke. Or the entirety of Gigi's character. I don't like Gigi's character at all. Didn't like him in the manga. Like him slightly more in the anime. Still don't like him. I don't find him funny. I just find him annoying. Even in like an annoying, funny way, I just find him annoying. But I will say, overall, I think I do enjoy the anime more than the manga. Mostly because it just takes what is good about the manga and just sort of enhances it through the audio-visual medium. Like, voice acting for the most part is really fucking solid. I forgot who the voice actors are for everyone, but Ayase's voice actress is really fucking good. Just absolutely spot on for what I expected that character to sound like. Okarun's voice actor is also really damn solid, and they're very good at accentuating this extremely weird comedy. This is like, the extremes of the comedy are very extreme in Dandadan, and sometimes it works in their favor, sometimes it doesn't. Like the voice acting for the Seroipans, the first aliens that they encounter in the series. I watched the first episode a while back, but apparently they do like a falsetto voice acting for them, at least like when they show up later in the series. Hit and miss. I'm talking a lot about the technical aspects of it because I'm kind of avoiding talking about the story aspects, because, to be honest, the story aspects of Dandadan are not my favorite. It's one of the reasons why I stopped reading the manga. I love the character chemistry amongst everyone. I think that's really incredibly solid. The romantic chemistry between Ayase and Okarun is fucking incredible. It is a really strong, like, budding romance of sorts. I assume at some point in the manga they are going to get together. They goddamn better, because the chemistry is fucking off the charts for them. And it's just this very, very sweet, like, teenage budding romance that just is, again, all you have to do to make me instantly love your shonen action series is add in like actually good romance to it, and they have that. I just wish I liked the rest of the story because it's how do I properly describe this? Aside from the fact that the comedy is extremely hit and miss, the dramatic stakes are also very hit and miss. Like sometimes you'll get these very, very incredible like one-off stories about like the acrobatic Silky, her backstory when it's finally revealed in this incredibly like sweet and like sensitive montage about this single mother trying to take care of her kid and just the tragedy that befalls all of that, and absolutely phenomenal cinematography and editing, and just so fucking good. And that, what was the other thing I was thinking of to be the on the other hand for this scenario? Right, the Seropians or whatever. When people saw the first episode of Dandadan and everyone was questioning like, hey, is there going to be a lot of sexual assault stuff in this anime? And I saw a bunch of people going, no, it's just this time. And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck are you talking about? Absolutely not, it's just this time. It's absolutely going to happen again. And it is happening again in the cliffhanger of this final episode. You could argue that the Turbo Granny also does it at some point in the midpoint of this series. So this show uses at least the imagery of sexual assault as like a way to heighten the stakes of a scene. So if you're not comfortable with that, you're probably not going to like this show. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It's real bad, actually. It's not great. It makes sense in the scenario they've constructed, but boy, is it that thing that I just described. So if you're not all about that, I cannot in any good conscience recommend this show, because it is going to do it more than once. Don't let anyone else trick you into saying that it isn't. It's going to do it more than once. Sorry, I'm harping on that because I saw people just being so incredibly dishonest about this online just to get people to watch the show. And it's like, guys, you're not going to be... It's not going to help your case in the long run if you lie about the fact that this happens more than once. Okay? Don't lie about the fact that it happens more than once. It absolutely happens more than once. Probably happens more than twice. I didn't read more of the manga past where it happens twice. Anyway. I do like this idea of how it combines like supernatural yokai ghosts and all of that realm with the alien sci-fi realm. It has a very, very interesting mixture of the two, and it actually meshes together really well in a way that makes this show stand out. Instead of this is not just a we're gonna have our supernatural and we're gonna have our alien sci-fi stuff all at once. It's not like they're not like butting heads thematically or aesthetically. It actually feels like they are meshing together in this world very seamlessly, and so I very much appreciate that. But honestly, the big star of this adaptation is the adaptation, the visual presentation of it. This is a Science Saru anime. I don't know who's directing it. Is it Ung Young Choi? I know they're at least the producer for it. I don't know if they're the director or not. But this is probably the most stereotypically looking anime for a Science Saru series that I've seen. Like it is closest to the anime aesthetic that I've seen of a Science Saru series. Again, and of a Science Saru did Heike Monogatari, and I think they did Over the Wall. I didn't see that one. God, I'm blanking on other Science Saru stuff that I've seen. Because I'm trying to separate Science Saru from Masaki Yuasa, because they're not the same. Did they do Devilman Crybaby? I don't think that. No, I think Science Saru came later. But anyway, this is a fucking beautiful adaptation of Dandadan. Dandadan as a manga is like extremely hyper detailed and very action focused. It has some of the best action that I've seen in manga that I've read. And Science Saru's adaptation condenses that down into something very appropriate for the medium that it's adapting. It takes much more of a breaking away from on-modelness with the action and with the supernatural elements, I should say. The character models actually, for the most part, stay incredibly on-model, which I would say is unusual for a Science Saru series, in my experience. And those models are really goddamn good. Sorry, I'm yawning so much. I'm recording this on New Year's Eve, by the way, and I just went out to dinner and drank a lot, so I'm surprised that I'm as sober as I am right now. But anyway, this is quite possibly the best way that Dandadan could have possibly been adapted. Just the hyper fluidity of everything in the way that Science Saru does stuff. The way that it actually makes really interesting cinematography choices. Like it actually, the camera moves around so much in this show, and it's really fucking beautiful and interesting to look at. The way things are blocked in all of the scenes makes it feel like it's worth being an adaptation. This is definitely not a, oh, they just slapped the manga on the screen anime. This is really a really goddamn good adaptation. In fact, I think episode 10 has some stuff that I don't remember being in the manga, especially with like Ayase's friends and also this nurse, BDSM nurse character. It could be in the manga and I just forgot about it, but I don't remember that scene being in there. And it was a really cool and really funny scene in the way that it was blocked, the way that everything moved around in the scene, the way that color works. The colors in the show are fucking beautiful. Just the extremes of it all was so incredibly good. Like this, almost like Star Wars-y kind of colors in a way. Like, you know what, the way that Star Wars plays it with like reds and blues sometimes. If it did that in even more interesting ways, that's Dandadan. God, this is a beautiful looking show. And just the way that it's, whether it's the extremes of the incredible action or the more subtler emotions that these characters are working through. Also, another thing that I appreciate about Dandadan is like it is very teenagery, both for better and worse, because like there will be misunderstandings, like is typical with anime, but those misunderstandings are typically resolved within an episode or so, like very quickly. So on the one hand, it's got that going for it. On the other hand, it's also got a lot of teenage humor to it, which is just very, very grating. Sometimes, God, I hate Gigi. Um, yeah, I've rambled all over the place about this show. The supernatural elements are really good, and this as an adaptation, this is the best possible adaptation it could have gotten. I'm just not like as hyped about the actual story as a lot of other people. It's very hit and miss sometimes. And goddamn did it leave off in a fucking weird place. But you know what? I'm gonna tune in for season 2. Uh it was good stuff. Could have been a little better, but that's just like my tastes and everything. As long as you're fine with the content warning stuff that I mentioned already, I would definitely recommend it.
Okay, Dandadan is complete. Our first end cap for the season is done. And we're going to scroll... Where did I say I was going to put you? I'm going to put you in the number 20 spot for the year right now with a light 8. Some of the stuff was a little bit annoying, but overall, damn good production.